Thank you, Andy. Hi, everyone. My name is Shay Meddings, and I'm the host of the Mental as Anyone podcast. I'm a psychologist, and I interview comedians and other entertainers about their mental health with the aim of helping to increase understanding and awareness of mental health. I've had some really insightful and interesting conversations, including with Andy, and I encourage you to have a listen. So find Mental as Anyone through the Facebook page, on iTunes or other podcasting platforms. Stay safe and well.
Hey, welcome back to the Andy-Social Podcast, and before we kick into this week's episode, come and join me on Patreon, patreon.com/Andy Dowling, the best way to support this podcast, and support starts from only $1 a month. Dirt cheap, set and forget it, and there are additional tiers if you want access to a bunch of free shit. A quick little thanks to the entire freaking list over at Patreon. Let's do it. Thank you very much to Ryan from Adelaide, Andrew from Perth, Mick G from Sydney, Ash from Deniliquin, Dan from Dapto, Riley from Sydney, the Toyota guys from Melbourne, Lords of the Trident from Madison, Wisconsin, Sean from Oregon in the US, Johnny from South Australia, Zach from Adelaide, Rod from Raleigh in North Carolina, Matt from Adelaide, Saul from Oxford in the UK, Patrick from Canberra, Liam from Brisbane, Tom from Melbourne, Chris from Sydney, Frank from Untergruppenbach in Germany, Lewis from Early Beach, Turner from Armidale, Samantha from Sydney, Brendo from Leighton, Tim from Canberra, James from Brisbane, Bradley from Canberra, Sean from Melbourne, Kurt from Brisbane, Jason from Adelaide, Christian from Canberra, Cole from Port Kembla, Jordan from Bendigo, Steve from the Gold Coast, Blooming Theatricals from Melbourne, Christopher from Pace in Florida, Ben from Cincinnati in Ohio. Come on, Andy, you can do it. Veronica from Adelaide, Scott from Melbourne, Tristan from Melbourne. Bloody hell, I'm falling apart here. Tristan from Melbourne, Gareth from Perth, Chris from Adelaide, Fierce Deity from Hobart, and Glenn from Canberra. Thank you very much, folks. Legends. These people are massive supporters of Patreon. Come and join me over at patreon.com/Andy Dowling. Hey, welcome back to the Andy Social Podcast, episode 279, and my guest on this episode is Tom Roberts. And if you're an Australian musician, you might be familiar with Tom personally, or just his name, or just jogs the memory, and probably some international musicians as well, because Tom had his own radio show and podcast for quite a number of years called the Full Metal Lockdown. And I was on there, and a lot of my mates in the Australian metal community have been on Tom's podcast, and an amazing interviewer. I had an absolute pleasure speaking to him many years ago, and I'm sure like our chat's still floating around somewhere. Maybe I should find that. I might link that in the show notes if I remember. If I don't remember, folks, can someone give me a nudge, and I'll chuck it in there if I can find it. But obviously in music, he's been very prominent with interviewing a lot of amazing musicians. He's also been a gig booker, a promoter. He's been a musician. And he's about to become a high school teacher as well. He's been studying for the past several years. A very busy guy. He's been involved in a lot of stuff. But the elephant in the room, which is me sort of awkwardly trying to, approach a subject, is that Tom is in a wheelchair. And Tom was diagnosed with a disorder at the age of 14 called, and I'm going to butcher this, but I'm pretty sure it's Friedreich's ataxia. And he's been in a wheelchair since his early 20s. And just ever since he was diagnosed at the age of 14, he has lived an incredible life and continues to do so. And we just scraped the surface in this chat. We spoke for a long time. This is an epic chat, and probably one for the ages when it comes to the Anti-Social Podcast. I absolutely love this chat. I haven't laughed this much in a long time. Just an absolute legend of a guy, and just a great sense of humor and great outlook on life, and just had an absolute ball. So I'm going to put links to Tom in the show notes, some of the stuff that we spoke about. If there's anything that I forget, please, as I said before, give me a nudge and I'll add it into the show notes. I'll have some of his old music in there as well. But yeah, an absolute legend. I really think you guys will get a kick out of this chat. It was a hell of a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. So what do I usually say? Enough crapping on from me. Please enjoy this great chat with Tom Roberts. How long have you lived in Batemans for?
Shit. I grew up down here, actually, and then I moved away in 2004, and I came back in 2012.
Wow, where'd you go in that gap?
Orange.
Oh, God.
Central West.
What?
Yeah.
What was that like?
It'll piss off my dad to say this, but I fucking hated it.
Bateman's Bay's pretty it's a pretty cruisy place. It's a nice place. But I would assume that out that way it'd probably be the same, but I guess just, I don't know, a little bit more dull maybe?
Yeah, there's no beaches or anything, so there's a little bit less to do. There's 32, between every pub and club, there are 32 bars in Orange.
Explains a lot.
Yeah, it's a mining town that's also a transport hub, so you can imagine what goes on out there.
Oh man, that's right. The rough rural centre of Orange, far out. Yeah, I've been to Bateman's Bay a few times over the years, and I was living a little bit closer to you up until a couple of years ago, and it's a beautiful part of the world. It's such a nice place, and as you said before, like, you know, you sort of pay the price a little bit, don't you? Because you get to live in like this sort of paradise sort of part of the world, but then it's also susceptible to like just horrific storms, and then you got bushfires and all the likes. So it really sort of keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we got hit by the bushfires, and a little bit north of us, straight after the bushfires, they got hit by flooding, and then straight after that, the coronavirus, and then the bridge is being knocked down and a new bridge is being built, so traffic's terrible. And then over the holidays, it becomes a madhouse because everybody from Canberra decides that Bateman's Bay is the place they want to be.
No, that's right. Get out of my town, city slickers.
Thankfully, I don't like the traffic, but I don't mind the tourism because we've missed out on it last 3 years in a row.
Yeah, that's right.
Or 2 years in a row. So yeah,
inject a bit of money back into the area.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been pretty touch and go. Well, I mean, I was going to say like last 12 months, but yeah, the last couple of years with the bushfires as well. I mean, you know, so many places down sort of the south coast just rely on like just traditional business, like, you know, services and you know, serving people food, hospitality, you know, restaurants, clubs, all that sort of stuff, and tourism, you know, Airbnbs and these beach homes, and man, like you lose that, and that's just, I mean, I don't know what the percentage would be, but it'd be pretty high.
Yeah, well, like the economics of the area got impacted like hard, like really fucking hard. And some of the hotels around the area still have families that had their houses burned down during the bushfires. They're still staying in the hotels.
Oh, really? Wow! After all that time.
Yeah.
Oh man, I remember reading an article. Oh, it must have been months ago. It would have had to have been before the coronavirus, because otherwise you wouldn't even see the article. Everyone's distracted by COVID these days. But I remember like people sort of having a real tough time of sort of rebuilding or even getting any sort of government assistance or insurance, because there was some loophole in their policies and they couldn't rebuild, and so they're sitting in limbo and probably like you said, sitting in like emergency accommodation, just trying to work out when things are going to start moving again.
Yeah, exactly. Like, some of the places have rebuilt, some of them just totally demolished their houses and moved out of state.
Yeah, just got out
because
completely.
they couldn't afford to rebuild, or that it was just cheaper for them to go live with family, or different circumstances, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, we were very lucky. The bushfires came because we back under a reserve. The bushfires came up and like pretty much singed our back fence.
Wow.
And the firefighters thankfully stopped it before it got into our property.
Oh.
Like, I say property, it's our backyard, but still.
Yeah. Oh man, we've got a place in Bomaderry, and we were already up in Sydney when a lot of the bushfires are happening, sort of further up towards Nowra, and just watching like there's like an app for like New South Wales fire or whatever, and it's got the map, and I'm just watching like the yellow and the red zones just getting closer and closer to our property. I'm like, oh, fuck off, come on, get away from my place, please.
Oh, I was pretty much addicted to that app. Like literally every 5 minutes I was checking it, going, holy shit, it's closer. Holy shit, it's closer. Holy shit, it's closer. The worst part is my daughter, she was 7, or no, 8. She just turned 8. She was in Orange, and we had a 5-year-old son with us. Well, no, he was 4 at the time. With us, so we were all separated, and all we could think of was screw the house. We've got to figure out how to get up to my parents' house in Orange where she's staying. So we ended up having to backtrack through Bega, go up the Brown Mountain, up through Canberra, up through Cooma, and then over to Orange.
Oh my
and
God.
It turned a 5-hour roughly trip into a 12-hour trip. Actually, no, it would have been longer than that. It was 11 just to get to Canberra.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, because all the traffic was so crazy, everybody trying to get out.
Oh, man, that's I mean, whatever it takes. Hey, I mean, it doesn't even matter anymore as long as you've got a way to just get away. You know, it doesn't matter how long it takes, just as long as you're moving. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it was a pretty hectic time, really.
How did the I mean, whether you guys got anxiety or not, but how, like, the stress and just the overwhelming feeling about the whole situation. But I mean, I'm just taking a stab in the dark here, but because of the situation that you're in personally as well, you know, you're not the most mobile of people out there. So did that sort of add an extra element of sort of stress and considerations that you as a family had to sort of consider as you were trying to evacuate, or even just leading up to that point where you had to get out?
Oh, hell yeah. Like, we had to call up the rural fire service, rural fire service, and ask them, like, how should we do this? And they're like, is he in a wheelchair? Yes. Okay, get out of Batemans Bay now, because if it comes any closer and we have to get you out of your house, that's an entire cruise worth of people dedicated to getting one person out of his house when they could be saving 4 houses.
Yeah, wow.
If you know what I mean. So we took their advice and we just got out, because Batemans Bay was without power for about 4 days. For 4 or 5 days it would have been.
It must have been, I mean, yeah, it must have been really, really terrifying just to sort of, because you just don't know, and especially, like, man, like, you know, you just, you know, no doubt because you were glued to that app, you're probably glued to every news feed as well, looking for all the updates, and, you know, it's serious, but of course, like, you know, the media hypes it all up as well, so you hear, like, the most extreme cases and stories that are coming out of this situation, and it's just like, oh, what a whirlwind of just chaos. Yeah.
Well, on the New Year's fires, like the day the big one hit and wiped out the little village of Mogo and Malua Bay, just on the outskirts of Batemans Bay, my wife and I were woken up from a siren going off, and we're like, what the hell? And it was our landline, which we used to have, and it's archaic, so we don't use it anymore.
Yeah.
But we should probably plug it back in, actually, because this was why it's useful. But it was our answering machine going off and saying, this is not a drill, this is triple O, we need you to evacuate right now.
Ugh.
And it was playing on repeat, and we're like, what the hell? And we looked at our phones, and it said, Malua Bay is about to be hit. And we're like, oh, crap. And then my wife called the fire service, like the emergency line, to see how long we actually had. And they said, stay off the roads because we need the people from Malua Bay and Mogo to use them to get out. Pretty much, and so the fire trucks can get in. Then we said, okay then, and they said, well, just prepare because you will have to leave soon. So about 10 minutes later, we got a phone call saying this is the same message, but it was telling Sunshine Bay, which is the area that I live in, to get out, pretty much. So my wife had already packed the car the night before because we knew something was going to go down. Woke up my son, got him into the car, helped me out to the car. wife ran back in for something, and I'm thinking to myself, because I rarely ever panic. Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing, but I rarely ever panic. And I looked over my roof, and I could literally see the flames from the forestry behind like the Duns Creek Forestry, which is about a half kilometre away from our house. And I'm looking over the top. I can see them just flying over the top, and then a bunch of burning leaves falling from the sky. And I'm like, oh, okay. Literally, I've never done this, and it hurt my knee. I jumped into the car, and I started honking the horn to me, my wife, hurry up. And then we got into the car. We got down to the evac point in this sporting area called Hanging Rock. And literally, as we were at the roundabout to turn into the evac center, we got a message over our phone saying, if you're in Sunshine Bay and you have not left your house, it's too late. Bunker down somewhere where you won't die.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then the fire pretty much ripped through the area. Luckily, like most of my neighborhood was, the firefighter stopped it from actually hitting, because I live right on the edge where the suburbia starts. So if it hit us, it just would have ripped through the entire neighborhood pretty much.
Oh, man. Oh, I can't even begin to imagine that. I mean, they're just those alerts and the answering machine. It's like something out of some sort of disaster movie, you know, something you're just at the edge of your seat going, oh my God, like starting to sweat, but it's real life, man.
That's what I was starting to think of. Like when I first all started, I was like, wow, this is something out of World War Z with Brad Pitt. I'm like, holy crap, this is crazy. I'm like, cars were like trying to rear end us because we stopped at a set of lights and the light went green, but we could see 2 fire trucks shooting through, about to shoot through the thing. And this guy in a massive 4-wheel drive with the bull bar was trying to ram the back of our van to make us hurry the fuck up.
Oh, God. Everyone's
and I literally hung out the window and told him to settle down. Well, I actually said some other words, but I pretty much told him to piss off, and then I told him to look over at the fire trucks, and then they went through them. My wife just sped off as quick as she could.
God, man. Oh, man.
Yeah.
So how long were you out of town for when, like, obviously you evacuated and things got pretty hairy in the area, but when did you decide to start moving back?
Because initially we went away for Christmas, and then all the fires started in the Narra, the Currawong fire, which is the narrow one.
Yep.
And so we, and the Clyde Mountain, which is the King's Highway, was shut off pretty much. So we came back down through Sydney. And when we got home, we were home for literally one night before the big New Year's fires happened. But we shouldn't have come home. And then we evacuated about 2 days after that to Orange. Then we were in Orange for about, I think it was about 3 weeks. Yeah. Because we ended up coming back, and then about 2 weeks after that, they opened the King's Highway. And it's the Clyde Mountain is still, the way I describe it is, you know, when in the movies those guys have those really bad hair plugs?
Yeah.
That's what the Clyde Mountain looks like.
Oh, God.
It's got no shrubbery whatsoever.
Just absolutely cleared.
Yeah. It's just charcoal tree stumps everywhere. It's brutal.
I can't even begin to imagine sort of how much of, I mean, obviously towns were just absolutely, you know, just flattened because of this fire, or these fires, I should say. But until you see some footage or people start talking about the size of it, it's really hard to grasp just how big these fires were. Like, they were just absolutely ginormous. And it's even now, like, when I start to sort of think about it, it's really hard to sort of wrap your head around and the size of them, and especially when these flies were getting close to each other as well, they were starting to sort of connect, and it's like, oh my god, you got this like literal wall of death just coming towards these towns.
Yeah, it's actually, I've been in walls of death, and they aren't as scary as what was happening. But we live about 10 kilometers away from the Princess Highway, if by road, and we got a message saying the Caravan fire, which swept down through the King's Highway, and it collided with the one in the King's Highway, and it moved down. That's the one that eventually hit us. It was about to jump the Princess Highway and into Duns Creek Forestry, and then with about 10 minutes later, we got a message saying it had gone through the Duns Creek Forestry already. It not only jumped, it traveled 10 kilometers within 10 minutes.
Oh,
it was moving that fast.
Insane. Yeah. It's just so hard to wrap your head around it unless you're unfortunately there or close to the action where you sort of get a real glimpse or an understanding of just how immense this stuff is. It's just and it was just our worlds for a long time there. I mean, obviously for you guys down there further south, I mean, it wasn't just a reality. I mean, it was literally, you know, life or death situations that were going on. But I mean, a lot of people, you know, on the East Coast just copped, whether it just be smoke in the city, up in Sydney or whatever it is, and it was just, that was all that people were thinking about and all that people could see, and just such an overwhelming period of time. And then you sort of come out of that and things start to calm down and people look to rebuild and get back on with their lives, and then you get this stupid bloody pandemic kicks in and it knocks everyone for six.
Yeah, man. It almost seems like a literal lifetime ago, and it was like a little over a year ago.
Yeah, it feels like a long time ago. Just so much has happened in such a short space of time. I mean, you know, I'm sure you're the same as me. Like you grab your phone or whatever, or you're on a PC and you're flicking through, you know, your news feed on whatever social media app you're on, and just the amount of stuff that's always going on 24/7 around the world. And because everything's so well reported these days, as far as, you know, you get information like as soon as it happens, it's so exhausting because you're just like, oh my God, like just things that you would, you know, for maybe our parents, you know, what we experienced in probably the last 12 months through the media and everything going on in the world would have been like a lifetime of our parents, like just like of the amount of stuff that people would have experienced. And for us, it's just like, it's become a norm now. It's just a norm. Just, you turn on your phone in the morning, you look at it and you go, oh my God, what's going on now?
Yeah, exactly. And like, I don't know how good that is, if you know what I mean. Yeah, it's interesting time to live in. I'll say that much for it.
Yeah, definitely. So I've got to ask you. I'm trying to think of a way to sort of turn into this sort of part of the podcast. But you know, we sort of alluded to it before that you're a guy in a wheelchair, and I think obviously that's, you know, something that is immediately noticed when you're out and about, and I'm sure you've copped punishes for many, many years, picking your brain, going, "What's going on, mate? Like, what's your story?" Well, I'm going to do the same for you. What's your story, mate? So how did you get into the situation that you're in?
Well, to make it not so much clear, but to start the story, I have to go right back to when I was about 6 or 7. And don't worry, it doesn't stay back there for long.
You take your time, mate.
It sounds like it's going to be a long ass story, but it is. But that part's not long. When I was about 6 or 7, I started playing cricket, and I was really, really into it. I wouldn't necessarily say I was the best, but I was good, and I was really fit. And then when I hit about 6, that's when I started playing for my brother's under-12s cricket team. When I was 10, that's when I started playing for my dad's seniors cricket team. And when I was 13, I was playing for 2 different rep sides and 4 different club teams. So I was playing 3 or 4 games a weekend.
Wow.
And then when I was 14, my life came crumbling down because my mum noticed that when I got nervous, my hand, like, it shook, like really, really badly shook, like worse than a nervous tremor. And she went to my GP and he goes, "Oh, I don't know what it is. That's referring to a pediatrician." Yeah, pediatrician. I always get them and the foot doctors mixed up.
I had a blank face then because I'm like, pediatrician, okay, what's the... Okay.
That's the kid doctor. Yeah, that's it. My wife's a nurse, so she'll shoot me if it's wrong. But I got referred to him, and he looked at it, and he looked at all my symptoms, and I was trembling at the time. And every doctor I had seen up to then thought it was multiple sclerosis, like MS, or cerebral palsy, or something like that. He looked at me, and from eyeballing me, he goes, "Nah, it's not presenting like any of them. It's this. I believe it is this really, really rare disorder called Friedrecht's ataxia." And I was like, and I've never heard of it before. And he sent me to a geneticist, and then about 300 blood tests later, they came up with the diagnosis, and it was Friedreich's ataxia. If they had to just listen to him and tested for it in the first place, would have found it. But I was 15 when I got the diagnosis. No, sorry. I was 13 when they started. I was 14 when I got the diagnosis.
Right.
But when I was about 16, I was told by my doctors, do general research, but don't go on to an internet, delve and go into it all because it's just going to scare you. So me being 16 and thinking I'm the king shit of the world, bloody well did that. And I read something that said that people with Friedreich's ataxia only live to about it was 14 to 15 years.
Oh, right.
And I was like, oh shit, well, I'm 16. Then I reread it and realized it didn't actually say that. It actually said they lived to about 14 to 15 years after diagnosis. Well, I was diagnosed when I was 14, and I'm 31 now, so I've lived past my diagnosis, which I'm very happy about.
Well done.
But it also stated, and this is a proper medical journal, but this is from about 15 years ago, so it's probably been updated by now. It also stated that a person with Friedreich's ataxia will be dependent on crutches within about 2 years of diagnosis and be permanently in a wheelchair within about 4 years of diagnosis. I went to a wheelchair when I was about 23.
Oh, right.
So,
wow.
Yeah, I lasted about 9 years. But, yeah, that's why I'm in a wheelchair. It's a long story, but the reason why it took me so long to get into the wheelchair is because I was so fit when I was younger. Like, I was a black belt in Kung Fu.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it must have made such a difference just to have that core strength that you'd built up as a kid, just to give you that advantage. And was it, like, when you were reading this stuff as, you know, as a kid, you've been diagnosed and you're sort of seeing, you know, you're reading what these experts are saying, and you can sort of see the path ahead. Did you... Oh man, like I couldn't even begin to imagine what would be going through your head. But was it a case of sort of going, like, "Fuck you! I'm going to see how long. I'm going to prove you wrong," or is it just a case of going, "Well, that's what I've got to expect, and so we'll just keep moving forward and just see what happens"?
There were stages. Like, now it's just I'm going to keep doing me. and I've got my kids, which is something to fight for. I've got my next stage of life, which is something to fight for. My wife, something to fight for. But back then, like, I fell into a massive fucking depression. Like, I literally was like, why me? For a bit there, as most teenagers are like. But yeah, I tried to literally take my own life a couple of times and failed both, obviously. And then I, after the second time, pulled myself out of it. Started working towards more and more, doing things, and started to accept, well, this is my life, and I've only got one, so I better fucking live it.
Oh man, like when you're sort of hitting that low point, you know, I mean, was there what sort of got you thinking a different way? Because I mean, that's not an easy thing to come out of. And I mean, I just look around at just everybody that you sort of bump into in life, you know, and everyone's got different challenges, and it's all big to the individual because it's only what you know, and that's how you compare it. But I see, you know, people going through, you know, depression and a lot of mental health concerns, and some people just never come out of it. You know, they just never come out. So for you, I mean, you would have every justification to feel all those extreme feelings that you've had. What was there something that sort of just gave you a little bit of a lift to go, okay, I need to relook at this and you know, take advantage of what I have, which you said before, it's you've got one life, so I've got to do what I can with it.
I'm trying to think that there were a few sparks in my life, but like I think connecting with the woman that ended up becoming my wife, we had so much in common, and she helped me through so much. And like, I was still struggling with depression when I was in my early 20s when we met. Or I should say late teens. I was 19, but I'm not really sure. Like, I always tell people, like, just because I'm going through this doesn't mean I'm not a human being, which means pretty much like you're going through your thing and your thing is important to you. It doesn't mean that my thing negates your thing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Pretty much what you said just then. And I started to realize that just because my legs don't work and my body doesn't function properly doesn't mean my mind doesn't work. Doesn't mean I can't articulate my thoughts in a helpful manner to a lot of different people. And I started to realize when friends started to reach out to me to ask me for help, like realizing that if I can pull myself through that shit that I went through, they can do it too. And they asked me how I did it. So it was more just helping other people and learning that I can lean on people like my wife to help me through some of the shit, and I don't have to go through alone.
Oh man, it's a big thing to sort of get to that point where you sort of look outside of yourself. I mean, it's such a selfless decision to make where, you know, so many people, and rightfully so, would just be so overwhelmed with their own situation and what's going on in their life that they can barely look past themselves, let alone looking at how they can impact others. But yeah, if you can find a way to channel that raw energy to hopefully inspire somebody else or give them something that they can work with to be happier, then it must be powerful stuff.
Yeah, well, that's the way I see it. Like, it's happening no matter what. So try and get some good out of it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. So I won't stick on the doom and gloom too much longer. But just so I guess, and anybody who's listening who's not familiar with the condition as well. So you mentioned sort of that expected or that average lifespan after diagnosis, and you've exceeded that. Well done. But what are the main reasons why they sort of say that you've only, like, that you tend to only have that amount of time? Like, what else is going on? Because obviously, you mentioned you transitioned to crutches, then eventually you're in a chair. But what else is happening to the body that sort of reduces that lifespan?
Well, it's a neurodegenerative disorder. Sorry, I struggle with words sometimes. In case you can't tell, my speech is slurry. That's part of the disorder. So pretty much if muscles atrophy, you can't ever get them back with Friedrecht's. At least I can't. Some people might, and they're freaks of nature. But yeah, like if I get diabetes, my body can't properly adjust to it. So that's pretty much a death sentence to me. Same with and by that I mean like I will die within a year if I get diabetes. Same with heart disease. If I get heart disease, there's no treating it. I've got to accept the fact that I'm probably going to die very rapidly because the heart is a muscle and this attacks my muscles. My legs pretty much went from tree trunks to twigs. So, my breathing specialist really wanted me to be careful because he was like, if you catch corona, you're gone. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, the muscles around your lungs won't be able to work, won't be able to function properly, and you just won't be able to breathe anymore. So I was like, oh, okay. So I better not get corona.
Easy, done.
Like, yeah, fair enough. Then I just won't get what 90% of the world's got.
Don't worry about the bushfires, mate. Now you got a bloody virus that you gotta fend off.
Oh yeah. That's just the last 12 months.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So condensed.
Yeah.
So it's a case that I guess, in a very overly simplistic way, like the body just tends to get weaker and, like it is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. My body's giving out, but my mind isn't, which is kind of a shit thing because it's literally a case of my brain being trapped in a body.
Yeah.
Like the Metallica film clip for One.
Yep.
It's based on the movie Johnny's Got a Gun. And that's about a World War I think it is, soldier that had a plane crash and can't talk, and he lost both of his arms and both of his legs. And his brain is still functioning, but they don't realize that he's communicating with them by tapping his head. But yeah, that's pretty much what it's going to be like at the end.
Mate, jeez.
Thankfully, I'm at the place where I know that I've accepted the fact that shit's going to go downhill, pretty much.
Well, anything that I say, you definitely have to take it lightly because here's me, like, life's pretty good for me, mate, and I to be able to relate to anything that anybody's going through is always going to be tough. But I guess in a way, we're all going to meet our end at some point in time, and I guess for some of us it's just going to be a bit sooner, and who knows? At least, oh God, I don't know. I'm digging myself a hole here, but at least I guess in a way for yourself, you've got some sort of idea of what's to come, and I guess you can mentally prepare for I guess the future in a way. Whereas I guess other people out there in life are so oblivious. Even though we all know that we're not gonna last, for eternity, we're so oblivious and we don't think about our mortality that we tend to just not make the most of our time, and we just make silly decisions and we dwell on things that don't matter and we stress out about silly stuff. And I assume, and just from things that you've said, and I've just looking at stuff online as well, that I think you've, out of necessity, you've been forced to have to sort of look at your life and go, all right, what do I need to do? What do I want to do? What can I cram in? Yeah,
pretty much. And a lot of it was done actually by accident. Like, I didn't mean to do all this stuff, and then I realized, oh shit, I am doing all this stuff, and then, yeah, it all became impressive, really.
So what?
Always.
So what's the? I guess because one of the things you shared with me, and I think we'll get into it a little bit later, was you put together a bucket list of things that you wanted to do while you still could do them, and there's still a few things that are outstanding on your list that you're hoping to achieve. But
Yep.
As you just mentioned before, like a lot of the things that you found a passion for and you got interested in and started to do was sort of just you're falling into these situations and sort of just experiencing them as they were coming. But did you get to a moment where you sort of looked at it and went, like, I need to sort of make a decision here, and sort of instead of just getting lucky with these great experiences, I need to sort of be a little bit more intentional about trying to seek these things out?
Yeah, when I was, and this is going to sound like I've been a big shot, but I'm not. But literally, when I was sitting backstage at the Big Day Out with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, I realized to myself, holy shit, I'm actually doing quite a bit in my short little life. I should start writing some of this stuff down and what I want to do further on. And then I literally saw the movie with Morgan Freeman and Jack Nicholson called The Bucket List.
Yep.
Which isn't that great a movie, but still.
Concepts.
The concept's there, and it inspired me, and then I started writing it all down, and then one by one just started checking it off, making sure it gave me something to remain determined to do, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. Can you remember what the first thing that you ticked off the list was?
Oh shit, I've actually got it here somewhere.
Yeah.
I think it was get married.
Yeah? Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one to start with.
Number one is, get married. Then number two is have kids.
Oh, there you
go. Number three is get a tattoo, and I've got plenty of them.
I love how, like, for a lot of people in their lives, like, one of the most daunting events in their life is to get married or go through that whole sort of marriage process, and you're like, got to be number one. Let's get this one out of the way. Let's tick it off.
Yeah. Well, I always knew I wanted to be a parent, and I fell in love with my wife early on, and I knew I was going to marry her eventually. But I always knew I wanted to be a parent because I wanted to be able to carry my kids while I was still able to. And thankfully, I did it all the time with my daughter. I did it twice with my son before it became too dangerous.
Oh, man. Just it's good that, and obviously, even if it's they're fleeting moments, you've been able to do it. You've done it. So regardless of the amount of times that you do it, the fact that you've done it is the main thing. Yeah.
I was very happy about that.
Yeah. So what other things? I mean, obviously, actually, a good question to ask is, how big is the list? How many items were there on there when you mapped it all out?
Around 100.
Yeah, well, okay.
And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 left.
21 left? Oh, mate. How good is that?
Or there are 2 massive ones that I'll never be able to do, but I really want to do because I think it will be fun. They're number 38 and 37 on the list, but Smoke with Snoop Dogg and Smoke with Cypress Hill. I'm not a mega fan of either of their music, but I just want to do it because imagine the story.
That's right. It's not a normal thing that most people get to do. Hey, like it's definitely a conversation starter.
I'm no illusions. Like one puff with Snoop Dogg and I'll literally fall asleep. And same with Cypress Hill. Like they would just go, it is. Oh, I'm gone. But at least I got to say I did it.
Oh, I love it. So I wrote down some of the ones because you gave me the list of the things that are still outstanding, and I wrote a few down there. But what are some of the ones that the more memorable ones? Obviously, everything means something to you, and everything's important. That's why it's on the list. But what are some of the big ones that sort of stick out in your mind that you have ticked off the list so far? Apart from obviously what you mentioned before, the marriage and family. They're obviously really important things for you.
One of my favorite ones is crowd surfing my wheelchair at a major gig.
What gig was that?
The Cavaliers at Metro Theatre a couple of years ago. I met a few people. I was there with one of my mates who we got separated, and I was in the front row, right against the barrier. And the crowd was starting to crush me. So I looked to my right and I looked to my left, and two dudes that had to introduce themselves at the start of the night. You know what it's like in mosh pit.
Yeah.
And I said to them, like, "Can you lift me up?" And I just gestured up. But what I actually meant was, I want out.
Yep.
Get me out. So they went, "Oh, okay then." And then I felt a hand grab the side of my wheelchair, another hand grab the other side of my wheelchair, slammed on my brakes because I made the mistake before of someone walking up and starting to mosh me, but my brakes went on, so wheelchair just spun and I fell out.
Oh, no.
But, yeah, so I slammed on my brakes, and then they just lifted me and started moshing me, and then Matt Scavaliero, what song was it? It might have been Refuse to Resist.
Yeah, well, cool. Oh, iconic.
And he genuinely just stopped in the middle while Igor is still playing in the background. Max had just locked eyes with me going, "What the fuck?" And then when I'd gone over the barrier, he's reached down and given me his pick, which I've still got here. And he's just like, "What the hell?" And he's just staring at me as I'm going along the barrier to get out of the area. And he's like, "That was so cool." And then he just kept playing.
Wow, what a moment, hey? Far out. Oh.
But yeah, I love that story. And also, there was one that a few people know this, but a few people don't. I have a few passions in life, and outside of music, which is probably my biggest passion, my other passion is professional wrestling.
Mm.
And my all-time favorite, one of the greatest of all time, is Mick Foley. A lot of people will know him as either Mankind or Cactus Jack, even Dude Love to some people out there. But I got to meet him in 2018.
What was he like?
Nice guy. He's, for all the punishment he took over the years, he's very, very smart. But in 2018, I met him at a wrestling show called House of Hardcore in Sydney. And with him were, the promotion is run by a wrestling legend named Tommy Dreamer. And on that show, there was Bob Ray Dudley, Tommy Dreamer, Mick Foley, Billy Gunn, a bunch of guys from the 90s and early 2000s. And I said to Tommy Dreamer, because their meet and greet was on the stage, and I had paid for a meet and greet ticket, but I couldn't get on the stage.
Mm.
So they all came down to visit me one by one. And I said to Tommy Dreamer, one of my life goals, and this is actually on my bucket list, which I got to cross off that night, was standing in a wrestling ring. And I was like, I'm in a wheelchair. I'm 6'2". I weigh a bit over 100 kilos, but all I want to do is stand in a ring. Like, when everybody pisses off at the end of the night, can I please just roll into the ring and use the ropes to stand up? Went, we'll see. It's pretty high. It's pretty difficult to get in. I might do. When I stand up, I'm 6'2". And it's like, when I stand up, I'm 6'1". We'll just see. So at the end of the night, the whole thing finished up, and they were doing their speeches at the end of the night. And then at the end of the night, Tommy Dreamer handed the mic to Mick Foley, then whispered something in Mick Foley's ear and said, Tommy has just told me there was a gentleman over here in a wheelchair, and there were about 3 of us in wheelchairs around the arena. So I didn't realize at first I was talking about me. And he goes, there's a gentleman in a wheelchair who's one of his last ambitions is to stand in a wrestling ring. And I went, holy shit, they're talking about me. So my mate who was with me, I said to him, oh, pull out your phone and record this. They're talking about me. And he went, no, they're not. They're not talking about you. You fucking idiot. And I was like, dude, they're talking about me.
Just do it.
Just pull out your phone and record it. He went, fine, whatever. He put out his phone. Then Mick Foley pointed down at me. And he goes, and Tommy's just informed me that tonight we're going to make his dream come true. And the whole crowd went silent for a second. Like, literally dead silent. And then everybody started to cheer when they realized what they were talking about. And Mick Foley and Tommy Dreamer rolled out of the ring. I took my brakes off. They pushed me to the edge of the ring. I rolled into the ring, and Bubba Ray Dudley, who is part of the infamous Dudley Brothers tag team, Dudley Boys, and he leaned over with one hand, and I went, dude, I'm pretty fucking heavy. Like, you might need 2 hands to do this. And he goes, I throw around 300-pound men for a living. I'm pretty sure I can lift you with one arm. He reached down and grabbed my hand and just whipped me up like I was a fucking feather. Like, I literally got airborne for a second there. At least that's what it felt like. And he pulls me straight up, and they're all holding me up in the ring, like, yeah, and like a bit over 1,500 people were in the crowd. Just, yeah, it was fucking awesome.
Wow. What a moment. Oh, I love how he's trying to tell you off. He's like, come on, mate. Like, yeah, you mate, this is what I do for a living. Like, just calm down. I've got this.
Yeah. Yeah. He was, they were always so nice too. Like, people have called a few of them dickheads in the past, like they're rude to people. No, they all sat down and talked to me after the show, and I got to know them and stuff. I still talk to Mick Foley over Twitter, like DMs and everything.
Wow. Isn't that so surreal? Yeah. Like, it's just crazy that a moment like that happens, and then to like form that connection as well.
Yeah. And that was like something that I wrote on my bucket list, and I saw the opportunity, and I just thought, oh, fuck it, I'm going to take this.
I love it.
And it worked out.
Is it something where you found, you know, as you were writing the list, or as you've seen these opportunities to tick things off the list, that I don't know, I mean, you tell me, is it a case of just no fear, or just having the confidence, or just going, I've got nothing to lose? And because I know, like, a lot of people would hesitate in the moment and go, you know, I'll leave it, you know, too scared to ask or put it out there. Is it just a case where you don't need that filter, nobody needs it, but you're not considering that anymore because it's like, hey, I can see an opportunity, let's just go for it and see what happens?
In a way, yeah. Like, it's the fear is still always there. It's just something you've got to get through. Like, the way I see it is the worst you can do is say no. Or the worst they can do is say no. They're not going to kick you out for asking a question.
Yep, true.
They're not going to kick you out for, like, being inquisitive, if you know what I mean. Like, if I didn't ask Tommy Dreamer that night, it wouldn't have happened. But because I did, it did, if you know what I mean. Did something
like that validate, like, in your head to go, like, now you know for sure that when you do see something, like, you just won't hesitate and you will always ask? Because, as you said, like, if you hesitated at that point in time and thought and reconsidered or second guessed yourself, I mean, none of that would have happened at all. Like, that whole experience.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it was literally like little devil and little angel on my shoulders telling me to do it or not to do it. But ultimately, I did it, and I'm very happy. It all stemmed back from the first time I ever put it out there and asked a celebrity to do something for me, which was when I was, and I harken back to this story, but when I was with the Peppers backstage in 2013, I leaned over to Flea, and I said to him, can you give me... A lot of my friends didn't believe that I was going to be there. So I said, a few of them are out in the crowd. Can you just tell them that Tom says hi? And he went, oh, yeah, we'll see. I don't go on the mic very much. So I leaned over to Anthony, and I said, well, like, you're on the mic the whole night. Can you just tell him that Tom says hi?
You punisher.
And he was like, oh, maybe. And then Josh Klinghoffer, who was the guitarist at the time,
yep.
I went over to him and I said, well, you've got a mic. Can you do it? And he went, what are the names? I'm like, and I told him their names. And he went, oh, I'll see if I can do it. And then Anthony leans over and he goes, what's your favorite song? And I said, well, Shoulder Squeeze, because it starts with the line, I've got a bad disease. And it always spoke to me. And then he went, because I've still got one of their set lists from the night. And I looked over at the set list and I wasn't on there. And I was like, oh, that's okay. I've seen you twice before this. And you played it both times then. So, like, you don't need to play it tonight. He went, okay, yeah, all good. And I ended up watching their set from start of stage, like on the main stage of the Big Day Out. And we're sitting there, and then they played their full set, and then they came out for their encore, and they broke into High Ground, their cover of the Stevie Wonder song. And then straight after that, they were supposed to run into a medley of Danny California and Suck My Kiss, but they stopped the entire show pretty much, and they said, Anthony got on the mic and goes, this next jam goes out to my man Tom. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, what the fuck? Did he just say my name? In front of like 55,000 people at the Sydney Big Day Out? What the hell? And they ended up playing Shoulder Squeeze and dedicated it to me, all because I had I wouldn't say balls, but I had the confidence to talk to them. Like, because I originally got it through a Starlight Foundation wish. Because I originally got okay for the wish years before that, but they hadn't toured in that entire time. And because I was okay for the wish, I was allowed to do it in my mid-20s. And the Starlight Foundation lady was like, no one talks to the celebrities. Like, we had a boy who just wanted to meet Roger Federer. And instead of talking to Roger Federer, he just went silent and embarrassed.
Oh, no.
But you spent almost 2 hours backstage with the band talking their ears off. I'm like, yeah, well, fuck. So I'm never going to meet them, so I might as well.
You got to make the most of it. Oh, mate. It sounds like you were the ultimate punisher. It's like, come on, guys. Like, come on, do me a favor. Come on, do me a favor. Oh, not you? Okay, let's go to you. Let's just keep going around the room. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And you got the result, mate. And, I can't even begin to imagine that moment when he just calls your name out before and then kicking into that song, knowing that they weren't meant to play that song. I mean, surreal, man.
I'm not gonna deny it. Like, tears started flowing almost straight away.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. What did your mates think after all this?
They were just kind of shocked. They were like, "Holy shit, he was telling the truth."
See, told you.
I was like, "Fuck," because it was. Granted, it was a pretty unbelievable story that I was going to be hanging out with the headliners at the Big Day Out before this set. Everybody, because like we've all met those guys that say, "Oh yeah, I hung out with Pantera back in the '90s." No, you fucking didn't. But like literally, and then when the photographic evidence came out, people were like, "Holy shit, he fucking did it!"
Oh mate, I'll have to chuck. I've seen that picture. I'll have to chuck it in the show notes so people can have a look. It's yeah, what a moment, hey. And so obviously for you, like, just an all-time favorite band.
Yeah, like the more modern stuff, no, not so much, because their more modern stuff is more, let's just say, commercial, not in the sense that it's like there's corporate commercial, as in that
very safe.
You'll see it on Tiger Dad.
Yeah. I use the word vanilla. Very very sort of bland and no surprises. Very safe.
Like, especially the new album had those moments where it looked like it was going to be the best album since Blood Sugar back in the early 90s. Mm-hmm. Then they were slowly releasing the tracks, and I thought to myself, well, they've never done a track where piano accompanied the entire song from start to finish. They've never done that. They've never done a few other things that they were doing. Then they released about 4 tracks before the album dropped, and it was an 18-track album, and then you realize those are the only 4 good songs on the entire fucking And then the album before that is just crap. No, I love them. I've got their logo tattooed to my wrist. I love them, but the album before that was just crap. The album before that was like Take It or Leave It. By the Way was crap. Californication was good.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
1 Hot Minute was just drug-addled crap. And Bar Sugar was good. And everything before that was fucking phenomenal.
I love it. I love it because you know how, I mean, you've come across these people over the years where just die hard, like just massive fans of a band, and just as you've done, like, you know, get a tattoo and just just be a massive supporter of a band. But I love, it's so refreshing to hear somebody that, you know, is such a massive fan of a band but also will not hesitate to slag off an album if it's just not good, because so many fans will go, oh, you know, it's not, you know, it's still not bad, you know, just in denial, you know, just trying to sweep it under the rug, but you're like, nah, it's just crap.
Well, I've met diehard Metallica fans who say Saint Anger is one of the greatest albums ever made. I'm like, what the fuck are you listening to? Dude.
Oh, yeah.
Not even Lars thinks that is a good album.
Oh, no way in hell. Oh, I was one of those kids that was just so desperate to want to love it when it came out. Like, I was, because they hyped it up so much leading up to that album as well. They were saying, like, return to the roots, you know, it's going to sound like Justice and all this sort of stuff. And they were just name dropping all this stuff from their past, and just, it was just the big hype machine. And I was just sitting there going, this is going to be amazing. And I don't even know what the first single was. Was it Frantic, or was it the title track?
Was its, yeah, the title track was its first
and
filmed at San Quentin.
That's it. So I remember that because I remember the video clip and the hyping up the video, you know, in the prison and everything. It's like, oh, this is metal as Metallica's back, blah, blah, blah. And I'm pretty sure that I mean, it's been so many years since I've listened to that album, but I'm pretty sure it's fairly heavy at the start. But I thought these riffs are kind of a bit bog, like they're just dry, they're nothing. Like it's just they're just chugging away, not going in any direction. And then when he goes into that soft, clean thing, I just my heart broke. My heart broke, and then I was then in like recovery mode because I was like just trying to like cling on to anything of worth, going, there's got to be something good in this. There's got to be something good in this. Like, there has to be something redeeming. And, well, I never went back to that album. I just couldn't do it.
And the way they marketed it was, this new fantastic bass player is going to be on it. And he is a fantastic bass player. One of the best in heavy metal, no matter what people say. Yeah. Just listen to the shit he did with Ozzy and the shit he did with Suicidal.
Yeah.
He's brilliant, but he didn't play on that album.
No, Bob Rock did. Yeah, I know.
I was like, what the hell? As soon as the Some Kind of Monster documentary came out, you realize that he didn't play a single lick on the album, and you're like, oh, that's why it was crap.
Oh, Bob Rock with the dad rock vibes, just laying down some bass lines on an album with a bunch of, you know, sort of boomer males that are just trying to cling onto the cool card, you know. It's just it was just, everything was so try hard with that album. And Metallica would have been, I don't know, that was my band growing up, and I was obsessed. And I think if like I've never got a tattoo myself, but I think if I was ever going to get a tattoo, it would have, like, Metallica would have been one of the first things I would have got. And I mean, I was one of those kids who had a GeoCities Metallica website, you know, in high school. And I was just such a nerd. And I just wanted to always be that number one fan, or in my mind, the number one fan. And when it got to around that era, I still really enjoyed sort of, you know, the loads and sort of into Garage Inc. and all that sort of stuff. But just Saint Anger was just, oh my God. But luckily, I think the fact that album came out, I think it really forced me to get out of my own little cave and go, what else is out there? And really go back to listening to all these other artists that I'd, you know, listened to here and there, but I was just too obsessed with Metallica, and then discovering all this new stuff. And well, I guess, you know, the rest is history music-wise, like, as far as, you know, all these amazing bands out there. But I mean, not to go on a fucking Metallica. I mean, that's low-hanging fruit to go and start talking about Metallica. Like, it's like, if you want to get some activity and some conversation going, just start raising a Metallica question or topic, and you'll get everyone talking. But
What did you think of their team up with Rick Rubin in Death by Magnetic?
Look, it was better than Saint Anger, wasn't it? I mean, but I mean, the bar was so low that anything could have been better than that. But I think it could have been a punchier album. It could have actually have been half decent if they just chopped the songs down. I think it was still a little bit self-indulgent at times, where they just, like, I don't know whether they're still trying to go for like this vibe from Justice, where they had all these complex arrangements, and that's good if the song actually continues to be good. But they just went off in these directions, and it was sort of like, guys, where are you going? Like, are you going to come back? Like, are you going to circle back and sort of go back into, you know, the main part of the song? And yeah, it was just hard to sort of latch onto that. I think the last one that they did that Hardwired, was it Hardwired? Is it the last one they did? Yeah. That was actually all right. Like, it's not an album that I would go back to often, but, you know, I hear those songs and I go, you know what? Like, there's some good stuff on here. Like, there's some good stuff, but I mean, it gets pretty funny when you get to a point where all the Metallica fans from the 90s who shat all over Load and Reload are all pining for a Load and Reload now because of just what's happened over the past 20 years with the band. You know?
Well, one of my friends told me a funny joke. He said, "What's the best Metallica album of the last 20 years?" And I went, "I don't know." And he went, "Whatever Meshuggah just released."
I like that. Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, fair call. Yeah, touche. Yeah. So we touched on Metallica, and we'll try and jump off that, but I'll try and use it as a little bit of a segue. So I'll come back to a bit of the bucket list shortly, but just talking about metal in general, and I know, you know, a massive music fan, massive metal fan. You had your radio podcast podcast that you were doing for a while there, and that was Full Metal Lockdown.
Yeah, that was my podcast. It started life as a gig, actually, like a little gig out in Orange, and then when I moved to Batemans Bay, I didn't want it to die, so I turned it into a podcast.
And I mean, what have you learnt over the years? Because I just know from me, like doing doing the podcast myself and just speaking to so many different people, you know, just I think it's so weird because I learn more about myself when I talk to other people. You know, just I sort of am always sort of picking the parallels or just discovering or having these light bulb moments. But I mean, you've spoken to a lot of people over the years and probably discovered a lot of music as well along the way.
Yeah, like I learned that Wednesday 13 is actually a really nice guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I don't like his music and I don't like Murder Dolls. I'm not going to say they're shit because if they were crap, I would do it. Yeah. But I can't do it. So therefore they are actually good. But I just don't like their style. But he's a really nice guy. And I learned that he got drunk with Ric Flair. So I liked him. But like, I learned, like, what's his name? I can't remember his name, from Suffocation, bass player.
Oh God.
I can't remember his name right now.
All my death metal mates are just going, come on, Andy. Come on, what are you doing? You should, you should know this, mate. You should know this. I'm trying to look him up now.
And the worst part is that one of my favorite bands, where I'm just having one of those mind gap things where I just can't remember the name of a band.
Derek Boyer?
Yeah, that's it, Derek.
Okay.
I met him and I interviewed him for the podcast and I was talking to him and I learned that even though Suffocation are like one of these bands that are just huge in my mind, he's still just a average Joe, if you know what I mean. Like, he's like, they're huge in my mind, but and like one of these incredible recording artists of the past and the future, because it's still going. But like, he still has to have a job and things like that just to make ends meet, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I mean, it's the grim realities of heavy metal.
Like, making it isn't necessarily making it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like in the back of my mind, I already knew that, but like, to hear it from a guy from a band that I've known for years, for decades, and absolutely love their song Funeral Reception. I love the way it samples Usual Suspects. But like, absolutely loving that music when I was younger. Just hearing the fact that he's still got to keep life going so he can't fall into a celebrity trap, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. It's a good way to keep you grounded. I mean, you know, not that you know, many of these guys have a choice anyway, but you know, looking at the sort of the positive side of it, you know, it's hard to develop a big ego or out of control ego when, you know, you've got to work, you got to make ends meet and work a day job.
Yeah. Like guys like Bernie Shaw from Uriah Heep, who were around when heavy metal was like incarnated, pretty much. Yeah. Like, there's an argument to say that they were around before Black Sabbath. Like, they were around before Black Sabbath, but there is an argument that people have made to say that they were the sound that inspired Black Sabbath. I don't fall into that category, but that's fair enough then, if people want to believe that. But like, hearing him talk and realizing that he's worked for like all these decades, and Uriah Heep still have to keep going, otherwise they just gonna fall off the financial wagon, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, it's there's so many bands that you sort of, whether it be like our parents, you know, you idolize on a record or something like that, or you pick them up as you go along on record or CD or something like that, and you just look at these, especially when you're younger as well, because you just don't know, you haven't had enough life experience yourself, so you can't connect the dots and you don't understand how sort of life works, and so you're looking at these guys in these album covers on these jackets, and you're looking at them going, oh man, like, they're just larger than life, these incredible people, and little do you know that they're just as normal and as boring as us.
Yeah, exactly. Like, at the end of the day, they're all human beings. Yep. That's the way I treat it. Like, I interviewed members of Anthrax, members of Fear Factory, members of Lord. Even I interviewed you, but like Psychroptic, King Parrot, all of them. The thing I learned over the run of the show was that they're all just human beings. If you know what I mean. Like, if you treat them like normal, they're gonna open up and talk to you. So, yeah.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. And it wasn't until I started playing in a band myself that I just like, it wasn't a choice. It was just shown to me that that human aspect, and that everybody's just as imperfect and as insecure and as boring and as lame and as nerdy as the rest of us. And as soon as you get over that sort of that mystique and that hype that is associated with these larger than life musicians that are out there, then you get to have really good conversations with people. You get to have a chat, and I think a lot of musicians who normally probably get treated weirdly by people because they're put on this pedestal probably actually really appreciate a normal conversation where they get treated as a human, as a normal person, and they can relax a bit. So yeah, it's a good way of approaching it.
Yeah, like, and I'm not going to name names. Some of them were pompous dickheads.
Come on, give me a name.
I don't know if I should, although I think he already blackballed me, so from ever interviewing him again. Because, like, we didn't exactly see eye to eye when he's a famous guitarist.
Okay.
And he toured Australia about 5 or 6 years ago.
Right.
But yeah, and he's got a hard to pronounce name.
Yes. If anybody listening to this right now can't connect the dots, then that's your problem.
Yeah, his interview never made it to air.
Right.
But let's just say that me and him did not see eye to eye when we talked.
Well, if we're on the same page, I think there's a lot of people in his life, in his travels, that have not seen eye to eye with him. So I don't think you're alone, mate, and I don't think it was anything to do with you either.
No, like when I announced that to a few people that I was interviewing this particular person, they said, "Be really, really careful when you talk to him." And yeah, I wasn't, and we ended up in an argument.
It sounds like the story you said earlier on, where you're a teenager and the doctor or whatever is saying, don't go and look up on the internet, and you're like, well, you just told me not to. That's exactly what I'm going to do. So same sort of thing with this guy. It's like, be careful what you're gonna, how you approach it. It's like, oh well, I'll just not do that. See what happens.
I was careful at first, and then he said something that I didn't want to let slide. So I was just like, no. And then he was like, what did you say? And I was like, no, you're not going to say that on my show.
Oh, mate.
Like, yeah, he didn't take that too well.
Oh, mate, this, you know what? I mean, I know you got a bucket list and you've put this together and you're committed to it. But if you ever think, hey, I've got a little bit more room to add a couple of more, I reckon to release that, whatever that was left of that episode, and release that as a bucket list, 101. Get everything else done first, but mind you, don't sacrifice anything else. But once you get everything else done, maybe consider putting that out.
I'm pretty sure if I do that, I'll get sued. It wasn't nice by the end of it, but yeah.
Oh god, that's so funny. Oh, I love it. So, was there anybody that you spoke to that just you were shitting bricks beforehand? You're really, really nervous about before you dialed the phone or answered the call.
Dino Cazares. I've loved him since I was a little kid. Yeah. Like not in that way. Fear Factory and Fun Heresy are two all-time great bands. Derek Boyer. And I was pretty relaxed with the rest of them. Like, I was pretty easygoing with them all. Like, my very, very first episode was Dave Haley from Psychoptic.
It's a nice way to start.
And I was pretty nervous about that, but not because I was talking to him, because I had met him a bunch of times, and we organized a gig with Psychoptic. I had to think for a second there. He's in like 40 bands, but it was definitely Psychoptic, and organized a band gig with him, and so I wasn't nervous about talking to him. I was just nervous about taking the leap of starting a podcast, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, just, is this going to work? Am I going to say something stupid? Is this going to come out okay? Am I going to look down and realize that I haven't pressed record?
I did that with, who was it? It was Ben Silk from Red Bear.
Oh, right, yeah.
The band from the Blue Mountains.
Great band.
They're one of the greatest prog bands in Australia going at the moment.
Really good band.
One of, not the best, because I don't want to piss anyone off. No. But yeah, I love them to death. But we were doing a 40-minute, 50 to an hour interview, and I got about 20 minutes into it, and I went, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ben, but I forgot to hit record.
Oh, no. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. You just have to keep going.
It happens sometimes. It happens to the best of them. I'm not saying I'm the best, but I'm just saying that it happens to the best. So don't you judge me.
Oh, mate. I did one with... I've done it with a few people over the years, but I did one with Chris Pachenko from Vanishing Point, and we just, like, we hadn't spoken in ages, and we just hit the ground running, and we're just having this great chat, great banter, we're joking back and forth, and I reckon it would have been a good 30, 40 minutes in, and I just looked down and my heart sunk. And he was in the middle of telling this great story, and I had to go. I just forgot about him, and I should have just let him finish the story before I broke the news. But I just like, Chris. I'm like, no, there's no recording. And to his credit, I mean, he is one of the nicest guys out there. Like, just not a bad bone in his body, just such a lovely guy. And he just said, "Hey man," he laughed. He goes, "Hey man, no probs. Let's start again. Let's try and recapture that vibe." And as soon as we kicked in, we decided to just make a joke of it at the start and to say, "Hey, we've just been talking shit for the past 40 minutes and didn't record it, so we're going to attempt to do it again." And it ended up coming out fantastic. We had such a great chat, but oh man, like, doesn't just kill you when you look down and go, "Oh no, just none of it's being recorded."
Chris is another one that I interviewed for the podcast years ago.
Yeah.
He truly is one of the all-time nice men in Australian heavy metal.
He is. I think obviously Vanishing Point's done a lot of great things over the years, and they put out a great album last year. Oh God, I got my years mixed up. I'm pretty sure it was last year, and still going strong. But I honestly think that he is one of the most underrated musicians in this country, and in metal, but also just in like melodic rock, melodic music in general. He's an amazing songwriter, and I think just somebody who's just, he's somebody that you want to be, and you just sort of think, okay, well, as I move in, like, I'm saying this not to sort of make him sound old, but he's older than us. And so I sort of go, when I sort of get to that point in my career where I'm a few extra albums in, and up to him, that I want to have that sort of outlook on life, and I want to be, really welcoming and appreciative of everything. And just, I mean, we played together at Prog Power in the US a few years back, and I stood there in the crowd and I watched him play, and tears rolling down his cheeks. He was just on cloud nine. He was just so happy, and the vibe he gave out in that room, everyone felt it, and I knew like how much this meant to him, and it was just, oh man, it was such a moment. And I forgot that we were even playing a show. Like, I forgot it was even Vanishing Point on stage. It was a Chris show for a while there. I was just watching him. So just a super nice guy. But it's amazing, isn't it? Like, when you, like, for you doing the podcast and talking to all these different people, that you get to you get to just experience a different side of people. You just see their faces and their names on the albums and listen to the music. But then when you get to talk to them, you go, oh man, like there's so much more to these amazing people.
Exactly. Like, I would call him a friend now. Like Chris Rand, who I saw was on your show recently.
Yeah.
And he's been on my show a couple of times, and like he played a gig for me down here in Batemans Bay.
Yep.
And we still talk. I'm trying to line up a tattoo from him. He's one of the nicest guys I've ever met.
Yeah.
Like, so, like, if you listen to Suggression's music, it is aggressive and hard, and it feels like it just wants to kick you in the dick. But if you talk to Chris, he's the nicest man on earth.
He is, man. It just does not match at all. It's just, another side of him comes out when he gets on stage or in front of a mic. My God, just so much coming out of that guy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, we could talk metal for hours, and we've both got a shared passion of that. But I want to go back to this bucket list. So you said there's about 21 left on your list. So what's some of the ones that are sort of sticking out at you at the moment? Are there ones that are sort of in your line of vision where you like, all right, these are the next ones I'm going to sort of gun for?
Well, like, I'm trying to learn a language at the moment, but it's not going too well.
What'd you pick?
Japanese.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Yeah, just because I want to go to Japan one day.
Cool.
But, yeah, I think the next achievable one is get a master's degree, because I just got my bachelor's degree, and I'll have my master's in about 3 years.
Wow, congrats. What are you studying?
Teaching. I've just got my bachelor's majoring in sociology and Indigenous studies.
Wow.
With a minor in history. And I'm about to be a secondary school teacher. It's like a high school teacher.
Oh, mate, congrats. I mean, far out. Jeez, I can barely muster up the focus to bloody put together a couple of podcasts each week, let alone anything else. Incredible. So masters is the next thing to tick off the list when it comes to sort of your sort of academic career. You know, learning, sort of educating yourself and getting those credentials is pretty incredible.
Yeah. Like actually, I kind of lied. The next achievable one is be a guest on someone's podcast. But that's literally an item on the list.
Whose podcast do you want to get on?
I don't know, probably one of the big ones.
Yeah. I'll try and help you out. I'll find one for you. I love it. Oh, well, I'm glad I can help you, mate.
I actually intentionally chose your podcast because I've listened to it before and it's good.
Oh, mate, thanks. Thank you. It's a lot of shit talking, but I'm glad that people like it. I'm glad that you picked me. You chose me, mate.
There are some items that I know probably won't happen. Simply because people are probably going to be dead. Like meet Hulk Hogan. I'm pretty sure he's going to die soon. Ride a motorcycle again. Be the rider. That'll probably never happen again. But I still want it to happen. I almost did this one. I know he's got a bomb rap, but book a show with AJ Matter from Soundwave.
Yeah.
Because we've known each other for a while, and I've always wanted to book a show with him, and it almost happened.
Is he still doing? I don't even know what he's up to.
I know.
Who knows?
I don't know if he'll appreciate me talking about him.
Oh, okay.
But he's kind of just retired. They're semi-retired at the moment, doing consulting.
Fair enough. There you go.
Yeah.
So,
but,
yeah, go.
Sorry, I was just going to say, yeah, but it's mostly just little stuff like, I want to get inebriated with my kids when they're old enough. Like, I want to get them drunk because I think it would be funny as fuck. The big one that I've always wanted to do is produce a release of a band or artist. I've never got to be the producer. I've engineered some recordings, some EPs. I've helped bands retool their songs, but they never recorded them. But I've never got to be the producer for a record.
Cool.
Apart from like my own releases, I have 2 albums out, but they're not heavy metal. And I just want to, before it's too late, I want to get a band and just blurt my my experience and knowledge onto them, if you know what I mean.
What's you might have told me this over the years, or I might have seen it, but what was the music that you did sort of back in the day?
Well, it came out of necessity because I was a bass player originally, but it was a funny story. My wife broke my arm, so I couldn't play bass anymore. But it was, she accidentally broke my arm. I should point out. And I was doing a music course at the time, and my major project was coming up. But I had to write and record. I had to write and record an entire album. So I was like, oh, fuck, what am I going to do? So I thought to myself, well, like, I was really, really into Nine Inch Nails at the time. And I thought to myself, well, like, fuck, I'll do something like that. Where, like, it sounds really complicated, but I don't have to do much if I just layer every instrument. So I got a MIDI keyboard, I got a drum machine, I got a few other synthesizers, and I started playing and started lapping it and overlaying it and stuff, and then putting it into Logic and just mixing all together, and it sounded good. So I just made 13 tracks of this acid trip friggin' electronic music. And I released it, and the next thing you know, people liked it. And I was like, well, fuck, that worked. Okay.
Is it still online?
Yeah, you can find it on Bandcamp.
What is
it's
it? What's
called Anti-Profit.
Anti-Profit.
Prophet.
Right.
Anti-Profit.
All right, I'm gonna go and have a listen to that. Sounds interesting. I'll chuck a link in so other people can check it out as well. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, and I did 2 albums and an EP. And first one is the only one that's good. In my view, anyway. People think I'm wrong about that, but I am a self-hating musician.
No, I think everyone's their own worst critic, so yeah.
But yeah, it literally came out of necessity, out of injury, and when I was able to, I just stopped.
Wow. So one of the other things I saw on the list, and I'm keeping on the time. I mean, I could talk to you for ages. I'm so glad you reached out, and we're talking about doing this because I'm stoked. And as soon as you answered before I heard your voice, I'm like, I remember that voice, and from a long time ago. But one of the things on your list,
like I said, I could blab for hours, man.
Well, so can I, and that's the problem, mate. It's we're both a bad influence on each other, and
we haven't even gotten into my actual work in the industry.
Oh, I know. We might have to do another one. I'm doing a lot of return guests this year, so I reckon we'll do another catch up sometime in May. Yeah, we'll talk more.
I'm more than happy to. This is my gap year, so apart from playing my PS5, I don't have much to do.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm going to try and pry you away from your PS at some point this year, and we'll have a chat. But maybe one thing to wrap up on this one is on your list, I think you had write your life story, And
Yep.
have you been doing some of this? Do you keep a diary, or have you been recording sort of thoughts and stories from over the years and what you've been going through, and all these amazing sort of you're just scraping the surface with me, just some of the stories you've been telling me tonight. But have you been doing some of this stuff over time?
I've tried, but honestly, and it feels really self-centered when you try and write stuff about yourself.
Yeah.
And I've wanted to, and I've tried recording it, I've tried writing it, I've tried typing it, I've tried dictating it to other people, and I get about 2 pages in every time, and I just feel a little bit like, why am I doing this? No one wants to hear my story. Then other people hear it and then tell me I've got to write that shit down.
Yeah.
Then when I try again, I go through the same mental process, and it's just a loop. So yeah, I've tried, but I've never gotten anywhere with it.
Well, mate, you got to do with what feels right for you. But I think, just as I said before, I think just scraping the surface just with some of the experiences that you've had. And I don't know, I mean, I'm sure people will reach out and people will make comments about this chat, and no doubt people will get something out of this and enjoy just listening to some of the things that you've experienced over the years. And maybe it's something to keep thinking about, even if you just write down a little thing here and there. They're just little reminders, little taglines and a sentence here and there, just little things to jog your memory, and who knows. But I think we all sort of think about that stuff in a way. You kind of go, well, how can I record stuff so I can, people will know what I've gone through and what I've experienced, and my feelings about things and all that sort of stuff. It's all so I don't know, man. It's I like, that was one thing that popped out when I was looking through your list of the ones that are still left outstanding, and I like the idea of it, but that's why a lot of people don't get around to doing it, because it's really fucking hard. So if you look, mate, if you're working your way towards a master's, mate, I reckon writing your life story. I mean, not that it's going to be any easier or any harder, but I think you're well equipped to be able to tackle it.
Yeah, it's I know how to do it, and I know all the processes to go about it. Like I said, it's just that mental, that thing that I've got to try and get over of. It feels really, really, really conceited to think that your life story is somehow something that everybody else wants to read. Yeah,
it's tough. It is tough. I don't know. Yeah, something to think about, mate. And maybe it's something that you have to, look at your inner circle of family and close friends, and think about what they might appreciate as well. And then I think then you start to remove yourself from it, and you get over those sort of roadblocks that you create for yourself, and you realize that you're doing it for a bigger purpose. But then again, you could go and ask everyone, and they might go, I don't want to fucking know about your stories. Like, come on, I hear you talking all the time. Shut the hell up. I don't want. So you might go, oh damn. All right, I'll turf that one.
I think that's why it also stays on the list, so that I know it's something to motivate me to go back to, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's just I think it's a good reminder, because just to force you to reflect, even if you don't end up doing it. Whenever you see that, you're forced to start thinking about things from over the years and different events and stories and all that sort of stuff, and that might spark a conversation that you have with somebody nearby to you. And I think a lot of us don't often reflect on things. We're always sort of going back to the start of what we were talking about earlier tonight, like scrolling through news feeds on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and just seeing all this shit all the time, and you're just constantly sort of distracted by what's going on around you, and you just don't really get the opportunity to look inwards. So maybe that's why it's on your list, is just to give you that reminder, just to keep looking inward and reflect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hopefully it will get done. Hopefully everything on my list will get done one day. But it also keeps growing.
Oh, so you are adding to it.
If I think of something that's cool, I'll probably add it to it. Like the Smoke Up with Snoop Dogg and Cypress Hill until like a year and a bit ago, it wasn't on my list. Because I'm not a heavy drug user. Like, I've smoked weed here and there, but I was watching something. It might have been that movie with Matthew McConaughey and Snoop Dogg. Can't remember what it's called. Beach something.
Okay.
But I saw it and I thought, oh, Snoop Dogg's a cool dude. I want to smoke with him. And then I thought to myself, well, like, if I'm going to do it with him, I'm going to do it with Cypress Hill. Hell yeah. I'm going to get insane in the membrane. There you go.
I'm just imagining you backstage at, like, they're doing some sort of jewel tour. You're backstage, you're talking to them, and you're trying to get them to say, hey, can you go out on stage and just say, hey, you know, this one's for Tom or whatever. And you're in the same position that you were with the Chili Peppers. And before you know it, you're on side of stage, you're stoned off your brain, and then you don't know what's going on, and suddenly Snoop Dogg starts shouting out your name. Wow. And it'll pop up on Facebook, and I'll go, well, there you go. It happened.
He will go to me, what song do you want to hear in our yacht? Like another rapper's song? Because I don't know it.
Hey, there we go. Now go and reach out to Tom, say hello to him. I'm going to have links to all of his social media pages in the show notes over at andysocial.net and andydowling.net. And I'll have some of the other stuff that we spoke about in this episode. Who knows what I can't even remember now. It was a very long conversation. So if I don't have particular things in the show notes that we spoke about, please let me know. Give me a little nudge and I'll add it in there. But everything will be in the show notes over at andysocial.net and andydowling.net. And of course, whatever you're listening to this through right now on your podcast player, it could be Apple Podcasts or Spotify or YouTube, Overcast, Stitcher, whatever. There should be a little description, some show notes in there. You should be able to click through and say hello to Tom as well as everybody else that's been on the podcast over the past 5.5 years. And as we sort of, I can't remember if it's in the final edit of this podcast, but towards the end, I mean, we could have kept talking for ages. I mean, between the two of us, both blabbermouths, we could have been going late into the evening. So I think I might get Tom back on sometime later this year because he's got plenty of stories to share and he's just got a great outlook on life. So I think I definitely need a bit more of that in my life, and I hope some of you guys feel the same way too. So hopefully get Tom back on later this year as well. So before we wrap it up, Patreon, of course, patreon.com/Andy Dowling. Great way to support the podcast. Looking for plenty of $1 supporters. It's nice and easy. $1 a month. It's nothing. It's like hardly anything. But when many of you join, your powers combined become Captain Patreon. Something like that. I've been using that way too much often, by the way. I've been using the powers combined thing. I might have to just retire that shortly. But Patreon is just huge for me and the podcast and for you guys that have been listening for a long time. You know what I'm going to say. It is the reason why this podcast exists this year in 2021. It's the reason why there's 2 episodes a week. It's so much fun, and I'm getting so much fuel and motivation from the Patreon community. The money is a massive help. It covers a lot of the overheads of production, editing, hosting, gear, all sorts of stuff that sort of just gradually creeps up over time. And so that takes a massive load off. But more importantly, it's just it's a lovely validation and some fantastic motivation for me to continue just persevering and sharing some amazing episodes like this one with Tom as well. So go and check it all out over at patreon.com/Andy Dowling. Would absolutely love to have you, give you a little shout out in the podcast. And if you are interested in free shit or the exclusive Patreon podcast that comes out every Tuesday morning, then you can sign up to one of the higher tiers, one of the additional tiers there, and get access to a bunch of other stuff on there as well. So go and check it all out. Who's coming next? Now, I have a bunch of people recorded. I've got a list of people. There are still a stack of musicians that are coming up, but I've got one that I'm recording tomorrow night. At the time of recording this outro, I'm recording somebody really cool, in my opinion, anyway. And I just if it goes ahead, because sometimes in this podcast game, you lock something in, you commit to something, and then it just doesn't always happen. So if it does happen and it is good, then I might put that out next. So we'll see. So until then, folks, take care and ta-ta.